All right, this time we're going to be making a freezer stencil t-shirt. I mean, really, you can do it in any kind of fabric. But anyway, so we have our stencil. And again, you don't want anything too complicated because it's hard to cut out. Something that's one solid piece is much easier. We have bleach. You can also use fabric paints or paint like acrylic paints mixed with a fabric medium. You just have to be careful that you don't put the paint on too thick, otherwise it will bleed through the edges. So I have my spray bottle for my bleach. I have my freezer paper. It's important to use freezer paper and not wax paper or parchment paper. The reason being is freezer paper has wax on one side but not on the other, so it will stick to the t-shirt but it won't stick to the iron. As evidence, that's what it looks like when it sticks to your iron. You need an iron so that you can melt the wax onto your t-shirt. And there's my very loud cat. And here's my t-shirt. When you're going to cut out stuff, use your freezer paper. After we draw the stencil onto the freezer paper, make sure you have a really nice sharp exacto knife. It makes your life much easier. And that's everything you need. So I got my freezer paper. Okay. So I just want size a little bigger than your design. There we go. You can live in the box. Okay. So the shiny side, that's the part that's going to be against your t-shirt. This is the flat side. Shiny side. So we want to make sure that we're drawing our pattern on the non-sticky side because that's the way we're going to be ironing it onto the t-shirt. So I'm going to slip my design under here. You can tape it if you think you're going to take a long time to trace it. That can sometimes help. If you're just going to do it fast and freehand, then you probably don't need to, as long as you're pushing down the whole time. When you're copying your stencil out, you can use pen, you can use pencil. You don't want to use anything that has like a really heavy marker like a Sharpie or anything like that, because it might bleed when you put the bleach against it if you are cutting it out and you miss some of it. And you don't want to do that on your shirt. Now, does the bleach stencils work on colors other than black? Well, they obviously don't work on white, but they do work on greens and purples. I've done it on pink, orange, blue, pretty much anything that you're like, oh, this got a bleach stain. It sort of goes that sort of lightish color. So as long as you don't mind it going that color, then you're good. And there's a couple different techniques to do the bleach stencil. There's obviously like, well, I'll go into it when I'm doing the actual stencil, because I'm definitely going to be probably fast forwarding through this. And you probably can't see anything because I have my hand in front of the way. Again, does it have to be exactly on the lines? That's up to you. Now what you can do, if you have a symbol that's actually symmetrical, you can, after you draw the one side, crease it down the middle and fold it over, so that you can trace the other side after you, so you cut it this side, fold it over, and then trace. So it was 100% perfect, but these are homemade shirts, so they don't need to be 100% perfect. You might be wondering why I'm doing a Pan Pacific Defense Corps shirt from Pacific Rim versus something Kanji related. It's because I'm making the shirt for my husband. Because he wanted one of my stencil shirts, and that's what he chose. And it has a lot of straight lines, which are very much easier to cut with an exacto knife. All right, so there we go. There's our design. Now, important thing when we're cutting it out. So we have our stencil. So we're going to have a negative and a positive picture. So if we do it so that this black part is the black of the shirt, we're going to have to use this part of the freezer paper stencil and iron this part on the t-shirt. So that this, sorry, I have that wrong. You're going to iron the bird onto the t-shirt and maybe some sort of border around the outside so that this stays black. We'd have to do a border if that's the case. But what I think I'm going to do, hello, there's a cat off screen that has come for pets. I think I'm probably going to do it the opposite way. So I will make this bird, no, I'm going to do it the way that it is on this, so this black around it. So I'm just going to quickly sketch like a border around my thing, so I get that look to it. When you see it, it'll make more sense too. Again, you can freehand designs if you want to do. All right, there we go. So I have a border. All right. So now I'm going to take my very sharp exacto knife and I'm going to start cutting along my... And you can use these stencils over several times, depending on what you use. If you use fabric paint, you probably will not get as many uses out of the same stencil. If you're using bleach, you can usually get, I don't know, 3 to 4 versions of the stencil. Now, if you're wondering why I'm cutting out the inside first, it's just because I have more space to hold on to. If I cut around the outside first, then I'd be holding this tiny little thing. So it's just a ease of... And if you slice on the freezer paper where you didn't intend to, as long as you don't cut it off, if you have a slit, it's usually fine. Now, what you can do too, if there's a hole or you rip a hole, you can actually cut another piece of freezer paper and iron it on top of it and melt it to the other piece so that you fix your patch. And just be careful when you get to intersections of where you've been cutting, because sometimes if you pull it and it's not cut all the way, you can rip the paper. You could use other things to do a stencil with bleach, because you're just spraying it. It's not sitting there a long time. And you can do combo ones, like bleach splatter shirts look really cool. They sort of give like an illusion of a galaxy. So it's really neat as if you sort of do your whole shirt with like a bit of a spritz so it looks like stars on the black shirt, and then you do a freezer paper stencil of like something. It gives kind of a neat illusion. And you want to be careful not to use too much bleach on the shirt, because then you weaken the fabric, so it will maybe not last as long as an actual shirt. So I'm probably going to be cursing when I have to iron all these little guys, but that's future Lindsay's problem. I might try to show pictures of other examples of things that you can do with the freezer paper stencils, because they're quite fun to use. It's sort of a easy way to do stencils on costumes too. Maybe not with the bleach, but with like a fabric paint. So again, I'm being very careful when I'm cutting not to cut off anything, just because I want to try to use or show you how to use the negative and the positive of the stencil. Oh, also the other thing, what you can do with freezer paper stencil, if you happen to have a Cricut, you can actually send freezer paper through a Cricut, and it will cut it out for you. So if you have a really complicated pattern that you want to transfer onto a shirt, or you don't want to do this by hand, you can. It actually works very well. Again, you just have to make sure that the shiny side is against the sticky part of the Cricut mat, I guess. And also pulling it off the mat can sometimes be tough if you have very thin detail lines. So as I'm pulling it out, it's getting stuck in a couple places, so I'm just using my exacto knife to help free it. Because sometimes I guess I didn't go over all of my... There we go. So we got a bird. So you'll see that this part separated. So when I put it down on the actual stencil, I'll have to be careful to make sure that it goes where it's supposed to. So wherever the paper is actually attached to the shirt, that is going to be black, or whatever color your shirt is. This is a good learning experience. So I cut way off my, well, not way off, but good way off my thing. That's fine. I'm going to come in at the other side. It just means when I iron this part down, I'll just have to make sure that that little piece stays with the other piece and doesn't try to go do his own thing. I'm probably using a ruler, maybe would have helped us. So there we go. There's our inside of our shield. And there's our outside. I'm just going to show you, and then I will bring over to where I have my ironing board so I can iron it on. So we have our shirt. So this will be if I want the bird to be black. No, this is what I want for the bird to be white. My bad. So I would be placing it in like that. And this is what I would be spraying. So this part will go lighter. So it'll look like that. And then if I want the bird to be black and it being like a cool splatter pattern around it, I'm going to be putting this guy like that with my shield. Oh, and my little star right up there. So it's important to keep both so you can use them as a template. Also, your actual template to use as a template. Okay, so we're now over at the ironing board. My iron is just heating up so that I can actually press it onto my cotton t-shirt. So the one thing, so I have my stencils here. I'm just going to put out of the way so I don't lose them. And grab my shirt. Now it's important because, especially when you're using bleach and ink, that you put something in between the shirt, like pizza pizza box works really nice because it has that nice plasticky thing so the bleach won't suck into it. Or I happen to have a canvas going around. So you can see that this was used as a stencil before that I used ink and it soaked right through. So I just want to make sure that doesn't happen. And where you put the board or the piece of cardboard or board or whatever in your shirt really depends on where your design is going to be. My goal is to have the design relatively even on the front of my shirt. You know, relatively being. So I'll just sort of keep a track of like where the board is in relation to where the armpits are on the shirt and where the collar is and stuff like that and how far down and over it goes. If you want to measure it, you can measure it. It just sort of depends on how you want to do it. And then I'm just going to take this big piece because this will give me an idea of where I need that board underneath of it to go. Oh yeah, I'm fine like that. Okay. So now I have to decide what I want to do. I think I'm going to do it so that I don't have the splatter background. I want a nice solid background. So this is going to be the part that I'm going to iron first. So I'm going to try to measure, try to make sure this is in the center. Ballpark. Iron's starting to get hot. So we're just going to iron it down. What setting do I have my iron on? Depends on the setting that you're using on your fabric. It does not work well with plastics for obvious reasons. Cotton works really well for the bleach splatter pattern. And it holds fabric paint really nicely too. And most shirts are made of that, so win-win. So right here, I'm feeling it, and my board is not underneath here, and that will be a problem when I spray it. So I want to make sure that it's down all the way. There we go. Sometimes it's handy to have a piece of tweezers if you're doing really small, finicky bits. All right, so I need this piece. I'm checking my pattern. So I might take a look at this and go, okay, it's that thick. Just so I know where to place it on this. And if you make a mistake, it's really easy to sort of pull this up and try again. Just be aware the more times you peel it up, the more times you won't be able to reuse the stencil because you'll have ironed out all of the stickiness of the wax. Oh no, you're bent. There you go. Okay, so I have a couple that are a little bent, so I'm just making sure that I'm patting it down. Oh, so see right here. That's a problem. It's disappeared. So we'll see right here his foot. And the reason being, it's still attached to this part of the stencil. So I'm going to take that off. This is where the tweezers come in handy. And I'm going to iron that part down, and then I'll iron that little piece down. So I figure out which way it goes. And again, doing the smaller ones, it's a little bit harder to see exactly. That's about right. There we go. No one will ever know. It'll be our secret. And again, using tweezers. I should have brought my tweezers. You can use your fingernails here. Just because I didn't like how that was sitting, because it doesn't look like the other one on the other side. There we go. Make sure that that's all stuck down. Now I just got to do this part. All right. There we go. That looks nice. All right, so I'm going to turn my iron off and plug it. So we have a nice big space to spray. So I'm just going to get my bleach. Another good thing is to have something that maybe you're not as concerned about that you can play with the bleach, just to make sure that it's spraying out the way that you want it to. So for me, I'm just going to use this shirt that I had lying around. So this is a freezer. This is what that's going to look like. And this is what happens when you use a piece of paper that's not as big. I got things, so it doesn't look as nice. So we're going to use this shirt as a bit of a demonstration. So I have filled this with bleach. So no, it's not coming out. So if I want like a splatter, or I got a line, you just sort of, so if you want the finer mist versus the, it's fun because it's slowly changing color. Right before your very eyes. So I'm going to try to do, so that was quite a big spray. So I'm going to take it down here and try to do it a little bit of a mist. There we go. And then again, we just sort of let it sit. This is one of those patience things. If you do it and then come back to it, because if you overkill it, like I did up here, that's going to be really bright. So here, see, look, there's a fine mist. And sometimes if you can do it outside and you can do like big chunky bits, or you can use a paintbrush and flick the paintbrush, you can get pieces that are bigger or smaller. But yeah, so what we'll do, I might just spray another thing. Oh, here, I'll demonstrate with this. So I have not ironed this down. I'm just showing you. I guess I could iron it down. I'll iron it down real fast because my iron's probably still pretty hot. Florp. There we go. So you'll see that I got some chunky bits over here. And now I'm just waiting for it to change. So you see that the paper got wet a little bit. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but it got wet a little bit from the bleach. So the important thing is when you want to reuse a stencil, wait till this dries to take it off. That will also help not get bleach anywhere you don't want it to. Okay, so now we're ready for our t-shirt. I'm just going to double check that there's no, I didn't get any bleach on the actual table. One thing you will notice, sometimes different t-shirts will bleach slightly different colors, even if they're black, which is kind of weird and doesn't really, it's just the, I guess the dyes that they use in it. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to double check that it's all mostly down. And I'm double checking to make sure that board is still underneath both pieces, and it's not. There we go, now we are. So I might try to tuck it in just a little bit. There we go. And then I get to let it, so I put that on quite heavy because I want this to be a really sharp color. So you can see it is starting to change color. You'll see that it's not even all the way around. That's part of what makes this kind of neat. It is all turning so that it won't be black, so it will look different, but it will sort of... We're back over here with our test shirt. So you can see the first spray that I did. Now what's interesting is that this is much lighter than that one. It is a different type of bleach, so I'm wondering if there's, or this might just continue to get lighter and lighter. And this was from our finer mist spray. So you can see if you were really far off and you sprayed it, you get sort of this like cool nifty star thing. This isn't really 100% dry, but I'm not using the stencil again. So see, look, doesn't that look cool? I guess I could use it again. It's not that bad. So this is the neat part. So I had sprayed a little bit on underneath. That's why you get some of the dots underneath of it. And then I did another spray over top. So I've really soaked this paper. You can see that it's really dry, really wet. I have to wait until it dries because I don't want this bleach to get on the nice black of the shirt. And you can see I got a little bit, I'm gonna focus? I got a little bit of bleach spray because I didn't protect that spot. Remember to protect all the areas around it. So here's an example of one that I did with paint. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. So this wasn't a great paint, and you can see how it's not very, it's very flaky. It's not as clean. So the temptation is to do multiple coats on it. Well, the problem is when you start doing multiple coats, you get up here where it bled a little bit. And you get it more chunky. So the trick is to paint a coat and then leave it. And then come back to it and paint another coat. Especially with the fabric paints, if they're not very thick. You got to do multiple coats and let the multiple coats dry in between. And you can do stenciling on letters too. So this freezer paper wall is all on here, and it was open freezer paper for the letters, so the bleach went in. But you'll notice how some of the inside part of the letters are gone. Now, I can either go back in with tiny little pieces and stick them on with tweezers and then iron them down like I did with that one piece that ripped before, or you can just say, it looks fine like that. Now here's one that I did a stencil with, and you'll notice that when I sprayed, I was really heavy right through here and here, but I was not as heavy through there. So you can get some really neat looking sort of designs with the bleach. The only downside is that the parts that are brighter like that, they're gonna be weaker in the fabric, so you may get holes eventually after many washes, but that is something to be aware of. So I just turned that test shirt inside out to show where I had that really big spray, and you'll notice that it came really quite through the shirt. And because I didn't have anything underneath, it also got the back of the shirt. Now, does it go all the way through so that you can see it on the outside? That's an excellent question. The answer is no, because I got lucky. No. Just something to be aware of. It's better to be safe than sorry. Alright, so I've let this sit for probably a couple hours, so it's all nice and dry now. So that's sort of on our test shirt. And now we're gonna, okay, so we've let it dry, so this is nice and dry now. So we're going to peel it off. So you can see it's nice, clean edges because we let it dry. This is definitely a very satisfying part when you peel it back and the pattern looks so awesome. And nice and crisp. So it bled a little bit there, but that's probably where I just got it with the, a little heavy on it. So we pulled one of those off. That's okay. That's that spot that we got there. All right. There we go. Now my husband is ready to go fight kaiju.